Number 2 is to determine the asking. Determine the asking terms. Write that down, the terms. We talked about some terms. We said 18 months, no payment, no interest. We talked about 36-month seller financing. The first 12 months, no payment, no interest, 6% accrued for the last 24. Because I've gotten great terms before on great projects. And it's up to you to know that the terms are one thing. Negotiating the terms are great. But all the factors have to come into play. Your exit strategy still has to come into play. Even if you get great terms, maybe the seller is selling you something and giving you great terms because there's no other exit strategy for him or her. And just because you get great terms doesn't always mean it's a great deal. But it definitely is more than half the battle. Number 3 is to determine project difficulty and time. It's project difficulty and time. We want to be able to get in with speed and ease. You've heard me say that before. That's to get in, make it happen within 12 to 24 months max, and get out with all of our profit. Now, the main key is to understand that we do want the cash flow, because this is the cash flow system. We want the cash flow to come in the door. That's what it's all about. We want the thing to be cash flowing from day 1 if possible. And if it's not going to be cash flowing from day 1, we want it to be cash flowing either day 2, day 3, day 4, just as soon as humanly possible. And if the projection on the deal is that it's not going to be cash flowing for 12 months, you better make sure, guys, write this down, that you're not doing debt service for a long period of time without the property paying for itself. Because what will happen is you're going to end up drumming money for a project that's never going to float. The project's got to float. The project's got to support itself. Write that down. The project's got to support itself. And through your projection, it'll tell you when it'll support itself. And through our formulas, not only will it tell us when it's going to support itself, but it'll also tell us when it's time to sell. And so many people don't even know that formula that you guys are going to learn here. Knowing when to sell is very important. All right? Number 4 is determine possible exit strategies. And I want you to write in all cap letters, A-L-L, all. That means all exit strategies. All exit strategies. Okay. Number 5 is to evaluate the property on balance and then decide. You got to look at the whole big picture. You truly do. You got to look at the whole big picture. All right. Gather the initial property facts on a single form by using your pre-screening sheets. They're in the back of this binder. And also, the new sheets will allow you to go ahead and put the information in there electronically and submit it to the portal. And then an acquisition team will go ahead and respond if it is, in fact, a deal. But there are buffers in there for you to analyze it and tell you if it's a pass or play. Because if the asking is too close to the ARV or the after developed value, it's simply going to go ahead and say the asking is too close to the ARV or the ADV. And that's going to save you time and save us time and save the broker time, and it's going to be able to do a good service to everybody. Do you guys understand how valuable that is? It truly is. It'll take it to that level for you, that step. All right? And you need to take it to the next step and do future evaluations and then get it through the pipeline. Now comes my pre-contract, and that's due diligence. That's very correct. Now, it could be due diligence if it's not done properly. Those are Italian fingers at 3 in the morning. All right. Use brokers, appraisers, engineers to get the data. I put that information in there for you so you don't write it in a different fashion. I wanted you to have that. Use brokers, appraisers, engineers to get the data, guys. These people are in the know. In the know. Let me tell you something as far as pre-contract due diligence is concerned. I had a property that I was looking at. It was a land play. This was a while ago. And this land play was actually out of Colorado. And that was back in the day when I used to go look at property. Remember, we don't go jump on planes flying around looking at property anymore. We go ahead and have that done by the professionals, the people that are going to go there that's going to make a difference. But at this time of my life, I was taking the time to go out and look at property, meet with brokers and sellers, and I'll tell you right now, guys, it doesn't make a difference. Actually, it's better not to go out there and meet with the broker or the seller. It's better to do business from afar via phone. It is. That's the way it's done. Something mysterious about it. Who is this person? What's this person about? You know, look, we sent them to the website. They look at it. It's got the acquisition criteria on there. It's got a nice picture. Look, we're looking at their picture, their property. Let them look at the picture of our website. It's the same thing. Tit for tat. I went out there and it made no difference. I went and I rented a really nice car. And then the heat seaters on the thing stuck on. And it was really hot in Colorado. This was, I believe it was in June or July. So I'm in Denver driving around, and the seat heaters were hot, and it was hot outside. And I had the AC on, and I'm driving like this. So I'm like, made a phone call. It was Hertz Gold Club, and I said, look, you guys got to bring me another car, and I want a nice car because this car is really nice, and I have a very important meeting on a very important project. So do what you can to bring another car to me. And they said, we got what you need. We got the premium. They pulled up in a baby blue Jaguar with big, huge chrome rims on it with white leather interior. Lisa shook her head and she said, what did you do? So here we are in this Jaguar, and I actually drove down to this property. And this property was in between two areas that were coming together. When we're talking about finding deals, I'm going to give you guys just a little food for thought. And I'm going to support that by our talk when we get to finding. But all the indicators were there. The super Walmarts were there. Okay, all the big banks were there. All the big food chains were there. Cranes were moving. Land was being graded. Things were happening. All right, things were happening in this area. And this particular property was about 170 acres, and it sat right in an area right on a main thoroughfare, and the road came right off the little corner piece of our property, and it continued back into the big city. So I knew that this property was something very, very special. So when I spoke with the broker, I said, look, first thing I want to do is make sure that we can buy this thing right. I went through my whole system, and this was in the early days, and I said, I'm going to come out and see. I'm going to come out and look at the property. He said, I'd love that. So I went down to go look at the property. So I pulled up in my baby blue Jag. Wow. And I remember parking, and the engineer met me there. Now, the engineer could have done this by himself. All right. We were buying the property for $4.6 million. Okay. We put down $50,000 down, and here were the terms. First off, the property was land, and it was agricultural. And we were going to be taking it from ag and bringing it over to both mixed-use, commercial, and industrial. There was some industrial on the back of the property. Okay. The rest of it was going to be all commercial. City was ready to go. Everybody was happy. We were ready to move forward. The engineer sat in the car, and I did the calculation. It was 171 acres and change. And I did the 171 divided by the 4.6. I believe it came to like 60 cents on the dollar, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. When I broke out and did the 43,560 square feet an acre times 171, I came up with this big number. And I took that number and I divided it by my purchase price of 4.6 million, came up to 60 cents on the dollar. So then I said, well, they're buying this thing pretty cheap. So I sat in the car with the engineer, and the engineer said, look, once we get these plans approved to move forward, when the rubber stamp hits the napkin, the value is going to go through the roof on this property. You're easily, on a bad day, going to be able to get between $10 to $15 a square foot for this property. Heart started pumping. Well, this is great news. So now I'm sitting on a property, a $30, $35, $40 million property. I said, this is great. Guys, let me tell you the terms I had on this. First off, the property was sitting in county. We're going to discuss this later. But for the story, the property was sitting in county. It needed to be pulled over to city so we could tap into the utilities. The utilities were right to site. We're ready to go ahead and tap into those utilities. Had road going through it already. So since it already had infrastructure, we could go ahead and, on paper, start selling off some of the lots because there's infrastructure already in place. That's the rule. All right? So we're ready to rock and roll with this thing. And I said to the guy, look, we just have to get the right terms to construct the deal. I know the purchase price was $4.6 million. I said, look, it needs to go through an annexation period. Will you go ahead and allow us to get it annexed, and then we close? And he said, that depends. I said, it depends on what? He said, how much you can put down. And I said, well, how much would you like me to put down? He said, well, he goes, I think a good faith deposit of $50,000 would be good. And then we'll go ahead and move forward, close on it. After annexation, then we go ahead and make it happen at 4.6. I said, that's fine. So I said, I'm going to need at least 36 months to make sure that we can get in there, get the plans approved, get it annexed, everything else. He said, that's fine. So now here I tied up a property, $50,000 to get in there. Don't even have to close on it. The property's tied up. Basically, we closed on it, contingent on annexation. But we closed. I mean, that was done. The paperwork was drafted. We were ready to go. And the engineer ended up going down and giving us my scope of work. Now, the scope of work basically said, okay, I need you to give me a deposit. Okay, we'll talk about deposits later. We need to give you a deposit, and then we need to go through X, Y, Z to make it happen. And I told him, I said, look, I need to know exactly the timeline, what it's going to take to get this thing annexed, so that way we can get it approved, because it had to get annexed, then it had to get approved, the plans approved for commercial and industrial. Then we had a conceptual plan. Conceptual plan just showed lots, and then we can start selling the paper lots. That was the exit strategy, to make money. And you can sell paper lots, okay? So where we were at with it is the engineer gave me the scope of work, and he said, okay, it'll take 12 months to get annexation done, and then we'll be able to get the plans approved right after that. Guys, I can't tell you how slow it moved. It was like watching paint dry. It was to the point, you know, I got high definition attention deficit disorder, so I'm jumping around. I'm like calling the guy like every day. Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Are we there yet, Dad? Are we there yet, Dad? You know, it's like nonstop watching this try to progress. And then the area was experiencing so much growth because there was a casino that wanted to come into town, that now they decided to hold off a bit. He comes back to me and he goes, actually, this could be 4 years now before we get it done. Maybe 5. So I'm sitting on a property here, and the bills will start stacking up for the engineer, and my exit strategy now went from speed and ease to watching paint dry. All right? And now the time has passed, and just 4 months ago, 5 months ago, my phone rang. My phone rang. And I looked at it, and I saw the number. The number looked familiar, but I don't remember why. So I went ahead and answered it. This is Terry. Hey, Terry, this is so-and-so. You remember me from the property out in such and such place, Colorado? I said, yeah. He goes, are you still interested? Guys, this was like 5 years ago. I'm like, did you ever get it annexed? He's like, no, property's still sitting there. I go, no, thank you. Appreciate the call, though. And I let him off. But, guys, that's the thing. Some of you would have looked at that deal and would have sat on it. And you know what that bill would have ended up cranking up to with the engineers to get that thing through? I mean, these people, I just imagine the guy going to work, you know, walking like this to going to work. I mean, and you can't do these type of deals and make that stuff happen any quicker. And believe me, I did. I talked a huge game with them about bringing stuff in and making stuff happen and really moving forward with it. Doing additional growth, even taking on additional properties, doing green space, dedicating people to help out with the city, pump things up, make it happen. They just don't want it. So that's why you have to deal with the motivated folk. So that's pre-contract due diligence. Just write the questions down for me, please. That's pre-contract due diligence. That's one of the things that we do have to do up front. And I'll tell you what, guys, no baby blue Jaguars for you guys in the room or listening to these CDs or DVDs, okay? No baby blue Jaguars, no sitting around for a year trying to see if a property is going to happen. I went through those cuts, bumps, and bruises so you guys can understand how quickly you can move forward with pre-contract due diligence. Do you know what it would take right now for me to make that happen? It would take this. Picking up the phone, dialing the number, getting the right person on the phone, which would not take long, and you shouldn't be doing it because I wouldn't be doing it either. It's our project manager calling down to the city or calling the engineer and having the engineer walk down to the city and say, this is what we want, how long will it take, can you make it happen? Can you give us some kind of letter that says, yes, we'll move forward and make this thing happen in X amount of time? Some kind of a letter of intent or a letter of interest, something that the city, ask the city. They won't always do that for you, but you can ask, and that's part of your pre-contract due diligence to see if they'll be moving forward with you. And I don't miss that project for nothing. All right? Just absolutely not. That's actually a great question, and I told him I wasn't going to take questions, but since I heard it, I'll go ahead and answer it. She said, what happened to the $50,000? Did you lose the $50,000? No, he didn't, because I called the guy direct, and I said, look, you got my $50,000? I'd like my $50,000 back, or else the property might never get done, and I'm just going to own your property until it gets done. I will control your property as I control it now forever. So you either give me my $50K back and drop it, or I'm just going to sit on your property. And you can go down and talk to the city and make it happen. Gave me the $50K back immediately. And he apologized. He said, oh, no problem. I didn't even know. Yeah, sure you didn't. It's okay though, guys. It's all right. I don't want to go ahead and talk about properties that we're not doing. I want to talk about the good properties that we are doing, because properties are plentiful. I'm just talking about pre-contract due diligence. All right. Now, on the flip side, the positive note, my property that I closed on with my student partner just recently, our senior living facility, that property we closed on in a very short period of time because it was fully furnished. It was fully furnished. 18-month no payment, no interest. $32,000 projection monthly cash flow once we get it leased up. We have a professional on the ground handling the property, handling the management. Is that a no-brainer deal? Absolutely, guys. No-brainer deal. So not all the deals, I'm just talking about pre-contract due diligence. Our pre-contract due diligence for that was make a few phone calls, find out what's happening in the area, know what kind of area it is. Knowing what's around the area is very, very important. And once we did that pre-contract due diligence and spoke with other management companies in the area besides our professionals, found out that it's not going to be an issue. It was a moot subject for us to go ahead and bring in the professionals to fill that. All right? You need to know right off the bat, is it a top 1% deal? If it's a top 1% deal, we move forward and we make it happen. All right? Focus on the bottom line numbers first. Gross revenue, guys, that's what's coming in. Okay? Less total costs, that's your cost, equals gross profit. So write that down if it's not there for you. Gross revenue, what's coming in, less total costs, that's your costs, equals gross profit. How much of the gross revenue is instant equity at purchase? We need to know that. All right? On the particular deal I just spoke with in Colorado, there was no equity at closing. It was all on paper. Do you guys see why it doesn't matter when you're talking big numbers? Do you guys understand that? Hello? You guys with me here? Yeah, it totally doesn't matter, guys. It's not about the numbers are at the end of the day. The numbers aren't in your face all the time, so don't worry about it when you're talking about these property. By the way, that property was only $50,000 and a 10% down, which is $460,000. You guys are buying houses for $460,000, okay? It's just the numbers at the end of the day. At the end of the day, with the loan that we're not going to be qualifying for is $4.6 million, and the numbers at the end of the day were an upside of $30 to $40 million. So don't get fixated on the big numbers. That's what most people in commercial real estate do. They think about the big numbers and they scare their pants off, okay? Don't think about that. How much of the gross revenue is instant equity at purchase? Like I just said, more equity now equals less risk later. The reason being is the more equity we get at closing, the less risk we have later, because with equity, we can go ahead and bring in capital. We can exchange equity for dollar. Write that down. More cash flow you have now eliminates risk factor. All right? If you do not have any income, you must pad the deal to cover your cost until it starts cash flowing or becomes flush. All right? You got to bring in, there's going to be a point on any project where we're going to know there's going to be some debt service that needs to be covered, regardless if you're a retail buyer or a wholesale buyer, regardless if you're using conventional wisdom or you're using my wisdom. It doesn't matter. There's going to be some capital that's going to need to be put into the game. That's the skin. That's the pad. So when we go ahead and bring in the capital for the pad, it's got to cover the deal if it's not cash flowing. That's why I said earlier, you got to make sure that get the property up, Get the thing cash flowing ASAP. That way the property floats itself and takes care of its own debt service. Then everything on top after the debt service, as we talked about cash inflows and cash outflows, then all the rest is gravy. But I still like to keep that extra money in the game a little while. And if you're with me, we're going to keep that money in the game. There's no reason to go ahead and strip that equity. Just keep that money in there, all right? Now, if you need new shoes or something, that's not a problem. Or a Ferrari, whatever you want, all right? You must know the asking price, the as-is value, and the ADV and ARV. You have to know that through your pre-contract due diligence. You have to know that. The asking price is number one, guys, all right? And you have to know the as-is value. Those are the two things, all right? That's what I go for right away. I want to know, basically, what they're asking, what it's worth, how much do they owe, and if there are any repairs. It's just simple. That's just what we need to know. Once we find that out, we can go ahead and piece it apart and then start asking questions. And it's fun doing this, guys, when you start asking questions, because these people, they like to talk. And who here likes to talk about commercial real estate? Yeah? You're just like me. Guys, I could sit down and talk about deals for a long time. All right? I don't need to take you guys out for champagne to sit here and talk about deals. I could talk about deals all day long with you guys. That's what it's about, right? That's what it's about. But we got to make sure that we're talking about something worthy to talk about. That's the only difference, okay? So if you're coming up to me saying, hey, I got this great deal. You got to check this out. I can buy it for X, Y, Z. It's worth this. Just put it on paper. I got to see it. I got a trained eye. You guys are going to have the same trained eye for pre-contract due diligence. Now, land equals the after-developed value. Appraisers and comps or land value will determine the true value. What that basically means, guys, is this. When it comes to land, it all comes down to appraisers and the comps. Now, how do we do pre-contract due diligence to find the comps? This is important. This is important. You got to make sure, as I said before, when it comes to finding out the value of land, you need to know apples to apples. Is it commercial? Is it commercial? Is it industrial? Is it industrial? Is it agricultural? Is it agricultural? Appraisers, guys, like I said earlier, they love to talk. You can sit there and just ask them. You can sit there and just ask them what they feel the property's worth now and what they feel the property's going to be worth later. They will tell you. They will tell you. And what I like to do is this. Here's your trick. Write this down. Very easy way. If you don't feel like picking up the phone and talking to anybody, or you don't want to appoint, better yet, your bird dog to get out there, pick up the phone, and ask. Now, these are, I call these comps, and this is a little bit of cheating when it comes to comps, okay? But this is the way that I do it. A comp, a comparable, is something that's sold, not something that's listed, okay? But what I do is this. I'll go on LoopNet, right, or I'll appoint somebody to do it. Now, if I'm looking at 200 acres and I want to know what another tract of 200 acres recently sold for, what I'll do is, instead of speaking with that same broker, I'll call another broker that's listing that property not too far away, and I'll say, hey, hi, I might be interested in this property, but I got a question. Do you know what land value is selling for a couple hundred acres in the area? And then the broker is going to ask you probing questions because they work on commission. Well, do you own any land in the area, or are you looking to buy or looking to sell? Do you have any land that I could go ahead and list for you? They won't say it just like that, but they're going to ask you probing questions. Are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Do you have any holdings in the area? They want to go ahead and work on commission to sell the property for you. So what I say is no. I'm an investor, but I'm just wondering what the land value is, and I'm actually not even the right person that you should be speaking with. I was just appointed to call you. Do the resort to a higher authority approach. I was just appointed to call you to find out what the values are in the area because we're curious, we're looking, we're trying to recognize a few opportunities. And she's going to say, well, can I get your number? First thing. And what I say is, yeah, that's fine, but I just need to get a little bit of information. And more than likely, they're going to say, well, I can get that information, compile it, and get right back to you. And I say, that's fine as well. Let me go ahead and give you an email address, better yet. And I'm really, really busy. And also, I choose not to disclose too much information to you right now. And the reason being, guys, is the same reason why Walmart doesn't. Don't ever think that you have to sit on the phone and get grinded by people when you're talking to them. Because rest assured, when big companies like Walmart call up, they don't call up and say, hey, this is Jack. I'm the front guy working for Walmart, and we're looking to buy a couple thousand acres. Because what will happen is the value of the property will shoot through the roof. You guys follow that theory? They do it all the time. They call up. People are very, very standoffish. Have you ever had that happen to you? No, you haven't? Okay. But it happens all the time. So don't think that you do not, don't think that you're going to have to be always, oh, I have to disclose all my information and everything else. Quite often, I just tell them, look, I'm super busy, and I've been asked not to disclose too much information. I will go ahead and give you my email address, though. And if you could email me the information, I will be back in touch with you. But I just am trying to find out what the values are. A lot of times, they'll just tell you. And a lot of times, if they're going to give you that much resistance, they're the wrong person to be talking to. So just go on to the next one. Go on to the next one. And you're going to get better at it when we talk about negotiations. We'll discuss that too. But the pre-contract due diligence, guys, you do not have to disclose who you are when you go through pre-contract due diligence. I'll just give a call to an engineer and say, hey, it's either going to be the right engineer or it's going to be the wrong engineer. It's going to be the right appraiser or it's going to be the wrong appraiser. It's going to be the right broker or it's going to be the wrong broker. That's it. You only want to deal with motivated people that want to deal with you. So when you're speaking with somebody and they're giving you a lot of resistance, just get off the phone with them. Don't waste your time. Say, look, if you can't help me, that's totally fine. I was actually going to come back to you once we go ahead and close on a couple thousand acres and let you sell it for us. But since you can't give me land value, I probably don't want to do business with you anyway, okay? They'll get it. You'll start playing. You'll know.